He who wants to cross the spiritual sea is long-suffering, humble, vigilant, and self-controlled. If he impetuously embarks on it without these four virtues, he agitates his heart, but cannot cross. Stillness helps us by making evil inoperative. If it also takes to itself these four virtues in prayer, it is the most direct support in attaining this passion. The intellect cannot be still unless the body is still also, and the wall between them cannot be demolished without stillness and prayer. The flesh, with its desire, is opposed to the spirit, and the spirit opposed to the flesh. And those who live in the spirit will not carry out the desire of the flesh. Galatians chapter 5, verses 15 through 17. There is no perfect prayer unless the intellect invokes God, and when our thought cries aloud without distraction, the Lord will listen. When the intellect prays without distraction, it afflicts the heart. And a broken and contrite heart, O God, thou wilt not despise. Psalms chapter 51, verse 17. Prayer is called a virtue, but in reality it is the mother of the virtues, for it gives birth to them through union with Christ. Whatever we do without prayer and without hope in God turns out afterwards to be harmful and defective. Christ's words that the first will be last and the last will be first, Matthew chapter 19, verse 30, refer to those who participate in the virtues and those who participate in love. For love is the last of the virtues to be born in the heart, but it is the first in value, so that those born before it turn out to be the last. If you are listless when you pray, or afflicted by various forms of evil, call to mind your death and the torments of hell. But it is better to cleave to God through hope and prayer than to think about external things, even though such thoughts may be helpful. No single virtue by itself opens the door of our nature, but all the virtues must be linked together in the correct sequence. He whose mind teems with thoughts lacks self-control, and even when they are beneficial, hope is more so. There is a sin which is always unto death. 1 John chapter 5, verse 16. The sin for which we do not repent. For this sin, even a saint's prayers will not be heard. He who repents rightly does not imagine that it is his own effort which cancels his former sins, but through this effort he makes his peace with God. If we are under an obligation to perform daily all the good actions of which our nature is capable, what do we have left over to give to God in repayment for our past sins? However great our virtuous actions of today, they do not requite but condemn our past negligence. He who suffers affliction in his intellect, but relaxes physically, is like one who suffers affliction in his body, while allowing his intellect to be dispersed. Voluntary affliction in one of these parts of our nature benefits the other. To suffer affliction with the mind benefits the flesh, and to suffer it with the flesh benefits the mind. When our mind and flesh are not in union, our state deteriorates. It is a great virtue to accept patiently whatever comes, and as the Lord enjoins, to love a neighbor who hates you. The sign of sincere love is to forgive wrongs done to us. It was with such love that the Lord loved the world. We cannot with all our heart forgive someone who does us wrong unless we possess real knowledge. For this knowledge shows us that we deserve all we experience. You will lose nothing of what you have renounced for the Lord's sake, for in its own time it will return to you greatly multiplied. When the intellect forgets the purpose of true devotion, then external works of virtue bring no profit. If poor judgment is harmful to everyone, it is particularly so to those who live with great strictness. Philosophize through your works about man's will and God's retribution, for your words are only as wise and as profitable as your works. Those who suffer for the sake of true devotion receive help. This must be learnt through God, through obeying God's law and our own conscience. One man received a thought and accepted it without examination. Another received a thought and tested its truth. Which of them acted with greater reverence?